All right, guys, yesterday we covered secret number one and we had a lot of intro, and I know a lot of y'all got a little impatient with that, but today we're jumping right into it after 15 minutes of technical difficulties, and where to sell, when to sell, and what to sell. And this is what I'm really passionate about. Where and when to sell is easy. We talk about weather and we talk about navigation. What to sell is what everybody gets excited about, because that has to pertain to the boat. And so that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover how to avoid some expensive mistakes and dangerous situations to stay safe from selling. I'm not going to read all the little subtext, but you guys get it. This is what you don't want. That boat crashed on Beverage Reef. I think I said that yesterday, back in 2016, when me and Chris were both crossing the Pacific. They ran into a reef, and that was navigation error on the pilot of that boat. That was a Privilege 495, by the way. That was a really nice boat, little sister to my boat, but that's what you don't want to have happen. And that's human error right there. And that can be avoided. All the times we've seen boats wreck that I've seen, my personal experience, all the boats that I've seen wreck out there was human error. And knock on wood, I don't want to be one of those guys out there wrecking a boat as well. So that's what you don't want. So we want to get into the 3 P's to safe sailing: preparation, planning, and problem solving. I mean, if you're prepared, and you've got the right mindset, you're ready to go. You plan you sail, you plan your routes, you plan your weather. That's good. And then problem solving. Once again, common sense is a big factor if you're out here on the water, and solving problems in a calm manner will keep you out of harm's way. So the 3 P's of safe sailing, that's what we always want to be thinking about: preparation, planning, and problem solving. Now, as we get ready to go, preparing yourself, your boat, and your crew. And this is so important. Before you start sailing, before you buy that blue water cruiser, that boat, the planning and the preparing starts way before then. And a lot of you guys are already doing that. You've got these 3-year plans, these 5-year plans. You've got these dreams. You're watching Sailing Zatara all the time, and you're thinking, when are we going to get out there? And you're making plans to do that. So once again, preparing starts long before you go boat shopping. And we're going to talk about some of the things about preparing before you go boat shopping. The most important part of this, though, is the relationship with your spouse, your family, and your crew. That's where it starts, because this journey, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday, this journey, this adventure it's either going to make your relationship better, or it's going to make your relationship worse with everybody involved. And so that's what we want to talk about a little bit today, and that's what we're going to talk about. I'm kind of double talking. I'm talking about myself. Preparation starts with your crew. Are you willing to make your crew partners in this adventure? Now, a lot of you guys, and the next slide pertains to this as well, a lot of you guys are the men want to go out and you want to go sailing. And the wives are going, what are we going to do? This is your dream. This isn't my dream. Your children are sitting there and they're saying, Dad, I've got my friends. I've got my iPhone. I've got everything I want right here in this little circle in town and at school. And I've got everything I want here. This is your dream, Dad. Why do you want to punish us? Or it could be the other way around. The wife could have the dream and the husband's in his career and he's busy and he doesn't want to go off sailing around the world because he's at the height of his thing. So to both people, both crew members in this, and older couples and younger couples, whether you have families or not, you're retired, you've got to be willing to make your crew part of their adventure, part of the adventure. Are you willing to do that? You as the captain, you're going to be the wedge that drives things apart or drives things together, brings it together. I mean, that's just a fact. You want to include your crew in decisions and share the highs and lows. And I'm going to give you an example of this. My children got into skateboarding, and you guys all watch, if you watch them, they're always skating. And so my choice out there with my kids is, we didn't come out here to go skating. We didn't come out here to go skate parks around the world. We came out here to sail, get in the blue water, go fishing, go scuba diving, kiteboarding. Yeah, look at the kite. We do a lot of kiting. I bought kite gear. We're going kiting, by God. And the kids go, we want to go skate park. So I have a choice as a father and as the leader of our home, co-leader of our home, if you're sensitive to that. I have a choice to think about them. And so now when we're out there sailing, I think, and when I'm looking at maps and charts and towns and cities and places to go, I think, well, there's a skate park there. It's out of the way, but the children want to go to those skate parks. And so it's not just my dream, it's their dream. They have dreams of skating. They have dreams of doing other things. Can I include their dreams into my dream, make their dream part of my dream, and let them fulfill some of their things. So, and now I gladly will go out of the way to go to the skate parks or go to the places they want to see, or where maybe their friends are at, even though it's not on my agenda. It's not on my radar screen. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I want to just kind of jump in and add one thing here. And the reason that we're covering this stuff again, guys, is I would say the number 3 question that we got when we put it out that we were going to be doing this masterclass was, how do I, get my partner on board, or how do I get them to commit to this vision? And we're going to talk more about this on the next slide, but this is why this stuff is in here. And this point here that Keith says, as the captain, you have the option to choose to make the voyage an adventure that brings the crew together, or the wedge that drives them apart. There needs to be a captain on the boat. This is something I talk to a lot of families about. It could be you and your wife doing this together, but somebody has to be the captain. Somebody has to be the one who's responsible for the boat and responsible for making decisions. In an emergency situation, you don't want to be, deciding who's going to do what. There needs to be one person who makes that decision, and everybody's in agreement that this is the person who's responsible. So whether that's, yourself as a husband or yourself as a wife, kind of depends on who's got more experience normally. And one of the things that I see happen here a lot is somebody has the vision for this. Like, for example, in my story, I was thinking about sailing for a decade before I actually decided and I made it happen. And when I said to Sayo, hey, I want to go sailing, she was kind of like, what? You want to do what? And I had to realize that she had a decade of me, reading cruising magazines, going on websites, researching. She had a decade of me gathering information to catch up on, and I needed to make her a part of that journey. And that's this point here about including your crew in the decisions, sharing the highs and the lows. I had to share the journey with her so she would become a part of it. So I just wanted to share that and kind of clarify around the captain piece. And it doesn't have to be the man. Statistically speaking, it is the men that are the ones, for whatever reason, that are into doing the sailing dream. And we see a lot of them just trying to drag their partners along, which we're going to talk about on the next slide, is not the right way to do it. But sometimes, more often now, actually, we see a lot of women that are leading the charge. So it really just depends on your situation. That's what I wanted to jump in there with.
So at the end of this, guys, on this, just be committed to how your family's dreams can be realized through this lifestyle as well. Don't make it all about your dream. Your children, your crew, the people you're taking with you, if you have family. And I'm passionate about family. I'm passionate about relationships. So that's why I spend a lot of time talking about this. And we're going to talk about boats and all those kind of things everybody wants to talk about here in a minute. But this is a critical piece for the families, the retired couples and stuff like that out there. I've seen older couples go out and retire, and they thought they loved each other until they got on that boat. And then they realized they didn't like each other very much, or they didn't know how to resolve conflict. So this is why we're talking about this now, because it's a vital part of the dream and the vision.
Perfect. I'm going to switch to the next slide, and I'm just going to go into somebody wrote a comment that there's a lot of people waiting on the main Facebook page. So I'm going to check out for a second, make a post to refresh the page to join. But here, you can take away this slide.
Okay. So one of the biggest questions me and Chris get, and I get, is how do I make my wife, most of the time it's how do I get my wife to go cruising with me, or husband in some cases, but most of the time it's wife. And the reality to that is you don't. If you guys try to drag your spouse, it doesn't matter whether it's man or wife, your partner, whatever you want to call them, if you try to drag them out there, it's not going to end well for you. The better question is how do you show them or her, him or her, the great life and the great relationship that y'all are going to have out there. And what I found talking to many, many cruisers and many, many families and marriages and relationships out there and children and other families, is that most of the women go out there, most of the wives go along because they're looking for the relationship aspect with their husband and their family to improve. They're looking for that connection that they're not having on land. They're looking for something like that. The guy's going out there because he's adventure. I'm going to be a great dad. I'm going to be a great this. I'm going to be a great that. And the reality of it is, and this is important here, is what, and I've said this many, many times, whatever you have on land is what you're going to have out here on the water. And the water is going to amplify whatever that is, whatever characteristics you have. And, if you're not a good, once again, if you're not good at conflict resolution, on land, in your marriage, in with your children, you're not going to be good at it out here on the water. It's going to get amplified and things are going to get worse. If you're great, you have a great solid relationship at home on land, you're going to have a great relationship out here on the water. And so, try before you buy the boat, you guys need to examine yourself. You need to do a lot of self-examination about your relationships with your children, with your crew, whoever you're taking with you, and find out what really goals and expectations they want out of life, not just this 2-3 year journey, but long-term. And I know this sounds like life coaching and it's kind of cheesy, but it's serious stuff because it impacts me. I mean, I'll give you a good example. When we first came out on the water and we started sailing, I was a great boss. I had 200 or 300 employees, and I could ramrod and boss and tell people what to do all day long. And that worked really well for me. But when I got on the boat, I started treating my children and my wife like they were my employees. And that didn't work out so well because they didn't sign up to be my employees. They were my family. My children didn't choose it. My wife did. And she, there were some hard times for me and very hard times for me as a man adjusting who I was and what kind of man I was going to be. I didn't want to be the guy who was always telling his wife what to do. I didn't want to be the guy who was always telling his kids what to do. I wanted to be integrated into my family and be a part of the family and not just the big iconic redneck guy telling everybody what to do all the time. And so iconic's the wrong word, way wrong word, but that's what popped out. I'm in trouble now. Anyway, so finding out what your partner's goals and how those can be met in cruising and practice a lot of patience, obviously. You need, and once again, this stuff needs to start before you buy a boat. It needs to, both of you guys need to be talking about it. You need to be talking about your expectations of each other. That's very important. What are your expectations of your spouse? And I'll give you another quick example about this. Me and Renee learned, we've learned in the last 2 or 3 years that, is Renee my partner in sailing the boat and operating the boat? Absolutely not. And you guys are going, oh my gosh, what? She's not. She hates sailing. She doesn't care to learn about sailing. She doesn't care to know what a line is, a sheet is, a tack, how the autopilot works. She doesn't care what north, south, east, or west is. Has no care in the world about that stuff. And I was really butthurt about that. I was like, we're supposed to be partners. Where's my partner out here? We did this together, Renee. It's me and you out here. I need your help. I need another adult, not just kids, telling me what to do. I need my partner. And I had some real bitterness towards Renee when we first started this because she wasn't wanting to learn this stuff. She didn't have any care of it. Well, everything has a season. And so the season came along for YouTube for us. And I'm just using this as an example for you guys. She wanted a partner who loves YouTube, who loves making movies and getting into the editing and talking about that stuff. And once again, I'm not creative like her when it comes to YouTube. I have no concept of the angles, the shots, how she's telling the story. I'm kind of a dud. I have none of that. And so she had to realize that I was trying to put her in a box as my partner for sailing. She was trying to put me in a box for YouTubing. And it caused a lot of stress in our marriage. It caused and we had to come to grips with that just because she doesn't like sailing, and I don't like actually sailing, but she doesn't want to learn sailing, and I don't want to learn video editing and YouTube, doesn't mean we're not great partners. It just means we're different. And we respect each other's difference. And we respect, and we've changed our expectations of our partners. Now, thankfully, we have children who fill the void for the partnership that I need help on the boat and things like that. And Renee's learned to understand that I'm just kind of a dud when it comes to video editing. I'm not going to be that bright, artistic guy. So that was a good example. I know that was a little long-winded, but once again, you want to try to sort those kind of things out before you ever get on the boat. That's understanding expectations. And I hope that helped. I know that was a little long-winded. So moving on.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I do want to highlight that last point though that you said, just to make sure everybody gets it, that like this life, what I found even in my relationship is my relationship completely shifted. And I shared that in my story. The way that I related to my wife and my kids shifted, and we developed what I would call a voyaging partnership. It was a true partnership. And I think it's important you absolutely have to do the work to do that now. I don't know if you mentioned this, I was checking the thing, but we've seen so many couples that start this life and they implode because they haven't done the work in advance. So the work starts now before you buy a boat, before you cast off your line, before you set sail, to figure all this stuff out, which is why we're covering it, because we want you guys to succeed. We want you to get results and have a good time out there. And we know that this is the stuff that's going to get in the way of that happening.
Exactly right. Communicating your dream, guys. Once again, most women do not want to end up single-handing. Just like me, I felt like I was single-handing the boat. Renee wasn't really a part of that, helping me get the boat going. And I had to change my expectations of that. The reality is the majority of people do not want to sacrifice their relationship for their dream. And this does take sacrificing. And one of the things I've always said to other couples and people is, you out here on the water, you have to learn to die to yourself. And you need to do that anyway on land, but die to your selfish needs, die to serve your spouse, serve your children, serve your family. Don't have pride and ego. There's no place for pride and ego out here on the water. That's only going to get you hurt, and it's going to get your relationships messed up. So, and I know this sounds like marriage counseling and life coaching, but it's so important, once again, that you learn who you are before you go do this, because you're doing this because you want to change your life. And I told Chris the other day, I didn't want to be that guy who was always bossing his kids and being I didn't want to be that guy. And, so once again, you want to communicate your dream. You want your spouse, your partner to communicate their dream back to you, their dream, and how their dream fits into this whole new experience of this lifestyle and doing this. And that's a big deal, is truly communicating expectations, having the right expectations and understanding unreal expectations. Just like fear and illegitimate fear, well, there's legitimate expectations and there's unreal expectations. And that's what you guys got to be thinking about when you come out here on the water. Communicate the life you want to have and the person you want to be. I wanted to be a different guy than I was back home in the States. I didn't like the man I was. I didn't like the father I was. I didn't like the husband I was. I was a mean. I wasn't kind. I didn't have much patience. I didn't have much patience with my children. I was a very demanding person, and I just didn't have a lot of patience and time for people who I thought just didn't know as much as me. That's hard to believe. I know you guys are saying right now, Keith, wait a second, people don't know as much as you. Well, the reality is I don't know as much as most people, but I acted that way, and it nearly killed my children and my marriage. And I had to realize I had to change that. And I'm still a work in progress, still working on that every single day, every single month with my wife and my children, of being a great father and a great husband and a great leader in our family. So communicating your dream, everybody, the children, the crew, everybody needs to be in part in the process of that. So I hope I'm not too long-winded on that, guys.
No, and I just want to kind of summarize this and put it in context. You started this section with this question, which was, how do I convince my wife or my partner or my husband or whatever to do this with me? And we said on that slide, you don't. What you do instead is you do this. You be vulnerable. You communicate your dream. You communicate, I don't like living the way that we're living right now. I want something better. I want something more for us. It's not about saying, hey, come and do this because of all these great reasons. It's about, no, this is what I want, and I'd like to do this with you. That's what we're trying to get across here. And I hope that makes sense. And like Keith said, it's a little bit life coachy, but it's the stuff, it really is the stuff that matters to make this happen and to be successful as a partnership with your wife and as a family.
All right. This is another subject that we get a lot of questions on, homeschooling. It's this big scary thing for a lot of people, because you've been programmed to think that the only people that can teach your children is a qualified teacher. Well, I think parents are the best teachers. Most parents are the best teachers in the world. And, obviously we've homeschooled our children ever since they were little bitty. Renee has a passion for homeschooling. Renee, come over and say hi. She's going to come say hi. Everybody want to see Renee? Clap your hand, give a shout out to Renee.
Hi, guys.
She's the
I'm
homeschooler.
over there chatting, talking to you. I just don't like being on camera.
She doesn't like being on camera. But everything I'm telling you right here about homeschooling is coming from Renee, okay? So before you get all pressured up about homeschooling, socialization, your children, are my children going to be able to interact with other children, the socialization part of homeschool, of a child's life. First of all, put everything you think aside about education, because you're changing your life right now. You're changing what you're doing and you're looking at something totally new. So the first nugget right here is take the first 6 months, year off of homeschooling. Your children do not need to be on the same pace and path of the schools you just came out of in America or Europe or wherever you're at. That is the biggest, craziest lie I've ever heard in my life. It's crazy. You've been programmed to think my children have got to be here at age 16, here at 17. They got to go to this university. They got to be a part of this. They got to play on this football team. They got to do. And it's crazy. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So the first nugget, take the first year off. Don't even worry about schooling. Okay. They're going to be learning so much right in the beginning, just all of you together as a family, relationally. There's just so much you're going to be learning. You don't even need to worry about academics right there. Number two, once you get ready to go home, once you get ready to start schooling, start easy. You only need to be one day ahead of your kids. And I'm going to give you some good examples of what we talk about homeschooling. Jack and Finn are boys, and our girls are very smart. And Jack and Finn are both smart, but they mature at different ages. If you have families and you've raised kids, you know what I'm talking about. Our boys were slower on mathematics than the girls were. So, I think algebra started for us at 9th grade. We were trying to keep our kids in that normal zone of schooling where they were up with their peers back in the States. And we realized that Jack just wasn't ready for algebra at 9th grade or 8th grade, whatever year it was. So I told Renee, I said, let's put him in algebra when he's ready, when he can focus on that and he can get it. So by the time he's 18, he still hadn't had algebra. And he finally took algebra at 18 and algebra 2, and he understood it. He was mature enough to do it. And he retained it because he was interested in it at that point in his life. He wasn't interested in it at 13 years old, but he was interested in it later. And he had the maturity to learn it. And that leads me into point number 2 is you only need to be one day ahead of your children. Basically, we taught our children to teach themselves. Teach your children to teach themselves. And in today's world with internet, high-speed internet, YouTube, all the information is there for a child to teach them. I mean, they learn so much on their own. It's unreal. I mean, it's just unreal what they can learn. So just be one day ahead of your child's ability. And when your child's ability is outpacing yours, there's plenty of online curriculum and everything like that to help your child go to the next level, whether it's if you want them to be an engineer, a lawyer, whatever you want them to be, that's out there. You don't need to burden yourself with, as long as you taught your child how to learn, that's the most important piece. And then number 3, by far number 3, stop. And all this comes from Renee and 24 years of homeschooling. Stop comparing. Get rid of the preconceived ideas of where you think your kid should be compared to everyone else. I mean, I don't know how many boats we've been around out there on the water where the parents have their kids just hammered down with every kind of high advanced curriculum you can shake a stick at. I mean, from English literature from the 18th century to calculus to rocket science. I mean, they're academically driven, thinking that is what's going to bring their children success. And it may in those worlds, in the worlds they want their children to go into. But once again, we want to pursue our children's passions and not force them to be. I mean, if they're academically smart and they have a bend towards that, that's great. But once again, just stop comparing, quit worrying about the rest of the world. This is a new lifestyle. It's a new adventure for you. Your children are going to turn out fine. Anna went to university. She was homeschooled all her life. She went to university. She's doing great there. She knows how to take care of herself. Jack's doing great. He's my best buddy. And Finn's my best buddy. Everybody's my best buddy at the moment. I can't just say one. But anyway, that's homeschooling 101 for this piece. All right, there is such a thing as too much preparation. You can prepare too much. You need to find the balance, and I'd say aim for about 70% of perfection. Some of you guys out there prepare, and then you prepare some more, and then you prepare some more. It is part of the 3 Ps of sailing, but some of you can do a little too much preparing and you never get out there on the water because you're never ready to go in your own mind. At some point, you just got to say, I've done the best I can. We'll deal with everything else as it comes to us. And that's part of the adventure. Now, I'm not saying you go out there half cocked and get yourself in trouble, but there is a line there where you're not half cocked, you're prepared and you're ready to go. So once again, there's no perfect time. And I get this a lot. When should we go? And me and Chris are both of the mind, you go sooner rather than later, because you do not know what door is going to close on you. You have no clue what door is going to close in your life that's going to keep you from fulfilling your dream, whether it be illnesses, bank account issues, loss of jobs, change in economy, COVID-19, COVID, oh my gosh. You just never know what's going to happen. And even today, people ask me all the time, Keith, COVID's got all these countries closed. Should I go sailing? Where should I go? What should I do? Well, me and Renee have been sailing all the time during COVID. Has it been a little more challenging? Absolutely. But we're living our lives. We're still moving forward, adventuring and seeing new places and seeing new things in the middle of COVID. And we get a lot of flack from the old guard of the cruising community because you guys should stay put. You should, But the reality is we're not letting COVID stop us from living our lives. We have to meet the challenges. We have to fulfill the obligations to travel now, but we're making it happen. And yeah, there's places we can't go, but we're not stopping our lives. We continue to go.
I want to add quick to this one too. We get a lot of emails and questions about people saying, I'd like to go cruising, but I've got kids. I'm going to wait till my kids graduate high school or go off to college, and then I'm going to go cruising. But we also get a lot of emails from people that say, hey, my kids have graduated college. I'd like to go cruising, but I'm now taking care of my parents because my parents are older. So there's always a reason to not do this. There's always going to be some reason that you're like, oh, I got to, I need to look after my kids, or I need to look after my parents, or COVID or whatever. And I think, the message for me is if you want to do this, it doesn't matter to me what your situation is, there's a way to make it work. And every single person I talk to, if you realistically can make this lifestyle happen, go do it now. If it's what you want to do, don't wait for anything, go and do it now, because you're going to know then, does this work for me? Does it not work for me? And you're going to open a ton of doors as to what's next.
And just right quick on that note, I just saw one of the texts, cruisers who have not been jabbed, and I don't want to get into a political debate about getting the vaccine or not getting the vaccine. There are places you can go. We went to the Maldives because you didn't have to have a vaccine. There are places you can still go and travel. Me and Renee did get half a shot in Australia. We was weighing the odds. I don't want to get into all that. You can watch one of our videos so you can see what we did there. But in the end, me and Renee got COVID here in the United States. We got back here to the United States, we got COVID. And it didn't impact us very much. We're all over it now. The kids, everybody got COVID, and it was no big deal. And I know a lot of people, it is a big deal. And I don't know why, but it is. But once again, we're not letting the fear of COVID run our life or direct our lives. We're navigating through it. It puts obstacles in there, but we're still moving forward with the challenges that presents. And that's part of the adventure too. It's like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? What are we doing next season? Where are we going? We don't have no clue what borders are going to be closed, what borders are going to be open. You just got to go at some point and say, we're going to roll with it.
And there's one other question that came I want to touch on too. It's somebody asked what age to bring kids on a boat. And then there's another question in here about kids from blended families. And so I started sailing with my youngest. She was 4 months old when we started sailing, my youngest, Mia. And so there is really no perfect age, again, that is going to be perfect for them. I know families that have kids of all ages and ranges. Would have been nice if my kids were a little bit older, like Keith's kids, and I could put them to work on the boat. Yeah, I would have loved that, but I wasn't about to wait until they were that age to go and live the lifestyle that I wanted to live. And blended families, I probably had one of the best excuses to not do this because I had a stepdaughter. And it was, but there was all these reasons, well, we can't leave because my stepdaughter is going to be in Canada. And we came up with what we thought was a creative solution to make it work. We had my wife's ex-husband, the father of my stepdaughter, come sail with us for 6 months. In hindsight, it was not a really great idea at all. But we got out there and we made it happen. And we took it one step at a time, and we figured out, we are where we are now. We've made it happen. So I really believe, like, whatever your situation is, there's a way to make it work. And you might make mistakes. I made mistakes. Was that the best way to go about it? Absolutely not. In hindsight, there was a better way that I could have done that would have been less stressful for probably everybody involved, but it didn't stop us. It didn't keep us stuck. We made a decision to move forward. So I hope that that answers those questions. There's just a comment in there that was 1 week on mom's boat, 1 week on dad's boat. You know, we put them all on the same boat.
I remember that too.
I wish we'd filmed it.
Okay, all right. Now we're jumping into the fun stuff everybody wants to talk about, which is the boat. And, you know, once again, I want to reiterate me and Chris's thoughts and feelings on the boat. The boat is a tool for us. That's all it is. We're not sailors. We don't claim to be sailors. We don't want to be sailors. We sail because that's how we get around on the boat. And what makes a safe offshore cruising boat? And this is our experience and my experience and Chris's experience. This is what we've come up with. Size. Is it a comfortable size? Can you handle the boat with your partner or on your own? And everybody asked, I saw a comment roll through there. Can two people do what we do? Me and Renee can operate this boat all day long, even though the boat's pretty automated, and we can operate this boat all day long by ourselves. Every morning I get up and I pull the anchor up. I put the sails up by myself. The kids are sleeping in, Renee's sleeping in. Then we go to the next anchorage. I drop the hook, I pull the sails down by myself. Now in a storm or in heavy winds, that might be a little more difficult, but it's still doable. And maybe I just don't put up as much sail, something like that. The only time it gets a little hairy handling a boat on your own is when you roll into a marina. That's the most dangerous time ever, is when you're going to park that boat in a marina in a berth and the wind's blowing side on and you're trying to get it in a slip. That is a divorce causing issue right there. That's when you're yelling and screaming and you're worried about scratching your boat and hitting another boat. And but you get past that, and those times get past. The next question we get all the time. Okay, wait, first of all, size. I didn't cover what I wanted to cover there. Is it a comfortable size? People ask me what's the right size of boat for blue water cruising all the time. And I just want to say that in my personal opinion, the 50 to 60 foot boats for families and even for two people are probably some of the most comfortable boats out there when you're cruising, because they handle the waves, the chop of the wave, the fetch, and they're just more stable. And yes, you can operate them just as easy as a 45 foot boat or a 40 foot boat. Especially when it comes to catamarans. Catamarans are so easy to handle. So in my personal opinion, the 50 to 60 foot size boat is the right size of boat for blue water cruising. And I think Chris would agree with that. I mean, 48 footers, 49, 46, those are all good size boats for blue water cruising. You know, we've seen all sizes of boats do it, but if you were going to go out and buy a boat, that would be the size I'd recommend.
I think that's just really cool. I think that's an important point, that what we're talking about is what is a comfortable size. A comfortable size meaning what's comfortable for your home, what's going to be comfortable on the water. There's people that sail across oceans in 26 foot boats. It's not comfortable to go and sail across an ocean in a 26 foot boat. So I want to be clear about that.
That's right. The next question we get all the time is monohull versus catamaran. And then we added Powercat to this. Obviously, monohull is not something you guys all watched us sell in a monohull. I would never recommend a monohull for a family cruising out there. Now, once again, though, if that's all you can afford and that's what you can get to go live this lifestyle, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to have the expectation and the mindset to deal with that. And that's something that can be easily overcome. But if you have the means and the wherewithal to get a catamaran, I totally would recommend a catamaran for, even if it's just two people. A catamaran is so much better at living. 90% of the time you're sitting at anchor, and it's just a better lifestyle boat. Now I'll jump into Powercats for just a little bit, or trawlers if you like a trawler and a Powercat. My thoughts on Powercats are, if you're in a regional area like Southeast Asia, and that's the only place you're going to be, or maybe the coast of Australia, or the Bahamas, or the Caribbean, Powercats are a great option because they don't use much fuel. If you get the right kind, they don't use a lot of fuel, and they're just as comfortable and easy to operate, and you don't got to worry about cells all the time. If I was going to be full-time in the Bahamas or somewhere right there, South Florida, the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, I'd probably have a Powercat. I don't think I'd have a sailboat anymore. Powercats have a real niche, and I think they're going to be stronger coming in the future. Powercats are really going to take off in the future because they're getting some that have really long ranges on them. And they're really neat boats. Catamaran design has come a long way, obviously. Catamarans are safer. You know, you hear about catamarans tipping over. I have never seen a catamaran in the 6 years I've been sailing flipped over upside down. It hasn't happened since we've been out here sailing. That used to happen a lot 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it doesn't happen anymore. The designs have changed. People understand how much they can load a catamaran up. The designers have made them more safe. And so it's just a lot of things have changed there. Rudders, catamarans have 2 rudders. Most boats, they get abandoned or because they lose a rudder and they only have 1 rudder. So a catamaran has 2. So that's another reason we like catamarans. It's safer. You have 2 engines on a catamaran. And, that's, once again, a diesel engine is the safest engine you can have on a boat, and 2 are better than 1. Now, I want to talk just a little bit about, people say, well, 2 engines is a maintenance nightmare. You've got more maintenance, more maintenance, more maintenance. 90% of the time on a catamaran, you're only using 1 engine. If we're motor sailing, we're using 1 engine. The only time we have 2 engines on our catamaran is when we're going into dock at a marina, or when we're setting the anchor and we're backing down off the anchor. So you're not using 2 engines all the time. You're using 1 engine just like you would in a monohull. So the maintenance cost is really not anymore, and you have the redundancy of those 2 engines. So that's a very important. In actuality, my maintenance costs on this catamaran are no more than the monohull that I had before. It's the same maintenance costs. It's just I get more hours between maintenance because I can run 1 engine versus the other engine. So it's the same thing. Key insight: always get a survey done by a credible marine surveyor. Now, I have real issues with the surveying racket. If you've seen any of my videos, I talk about that. I think the surveying thing is a racket, and a lot of surveyors get into the business and they just check a box. That's what they do, is they check a box. This works. And they're only talking about it working for while they're looking at it. It's not been run for hours to make sure it doesn't overheat or this or that or this or that. So when you do get ready to buy a boat, make sure you understand what's going on in that boat. You're going to have to learn, you're going to have to educate yourself on systems, and you need to understand, you need to know as much about the systems that surveyor's checking off as he does. And that's not hard to learn. That's what we're doing. We're here to teach you. You can look up YouTube, you can look up and be knowledgeable. Don't let those guys run you over. Most banks and insurance companies want you to have a survey done on that boat. So that's why it gets done. But get a credible marine surveyor, somebody who comes highly recommended, not from brokers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Find through through us or through other people that are offshore cruising. Get recommendations from them as to the surveyor to use. I personally wouldn't suggest getting a surveyor recommended by the broker. You want your own independent voice who you can develop a relationship with, and use that survey as a tool in the boat buying process. So that's my 2 cents on that.
And I just saw a comment about the cost of a boat, and I said it didn't cost me anymore. If you're on a 25-foot boat going to a 60-foot boat, yeah, there's going to be some cost difference, obviously, whether it's a monohull or a catamaran. But if you're buying that 50 to 60-foot boat, whether it's a monohull or a catamaran, the cost difference isn't going to be that much difference. So look, once again, when you get ready to buy a boat, let's look at as many boats as you can. I totally believe you need to look at as many boats as you can. And what I mean by that is if you're looking at a $300,000 boat, I would want you to go look at $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $1 million boats. And I'd want you to look at some $100,000 boats. Look at as many boats as you can, because what we want to do here, and what I want to get across to people, is how do you live on land? And how you live on land is how you're going to live on the water. What are your desires? What are your tastes? What's your style? How do you spend money? How do you, when you go buy something on land, do you buy the best that money can buy? And are you going to try to squeeze? Are you going to try? You're going to buy a boat where you can't do that. I don't know if that's making sense, but figure out who you are. Are you a camper, or do you like to live a luxurious lifestyle? Like Chris said, find out what path you're on there and know who you are, and then buy the boat that suits those needs, that you can be yourself and live that lifestyle in that boat.
Can I just tell a really quick story on that? So I had somebody that I was working with, and he basically thought that he wanted a cruising trimaran. Now, and that was like, just, he'd heard that they're great and they go fast and whatever. And, when we really drilled down into who he was and the type of lifestyle that he wanted to live out on the water and the type of cruising that he wanted to do with his wife, he realized, and his wife realized, that a cruising trimaran was the absolute wrong boat for him. And so it's really important that you start, like Keith says, you start and get clear on what it is that you need first. What is this vision of yours? And then you buy a boat that's going to match that. because there's all kinds of different boats out there for all kinds of different purposes. And you need to find the one that's best suited to what you want to do and how you want to live.
And that's exactly right. And once again, this preparation starts, like we said earlier, before you buy that boat. You need to know who you are and how you're going to live your life. And that's very important. A lot of people have these grand aspirations of sailing, and they go buy a 45-foot monohull, and they realize right away that that's not for me, but it's too late. We've already got the monohull. I did that. I'm the perfect example of that. I realized that because there was nobody to tell me, Keith, they didn't know my personality. They didn't know who I was. And so the boat brokers are just showing me these boats. They're just showing me these boats. And I saw Riley and Elaine on La Vagabond buy a Beneteau monohull. So I thought, well, it works for them. It's got to work for me. And that's why I did that. And all the brokers that I talked to, none of them asked me about my personality. Nobody asked how I lived, what I liked, how I spend money, save money, how I live every day. So it's very important to understand yourself, your spouse, and your children, and how y'all are going to relate on that boat, because it's a very small space that you're going to have to get used to. Ask yourself these 5 questions. And this, you guys know me, what size of dinghy can it carry? This is probably fundamentally, if you're an adventure cruiser, if you're somebody who likes adventure, this little piece is important. The dinghy dictates everything you're going to do out there, because once you're at anchor, that dinghy gets you to and from shore, it gets you to and from the dive spots, it gets you to and from the spear fishing, it gets you to and from, it's your rescue dinghy when you're kiting, if you're water skiing or tubing, whatever you're doing it with that dinghy. And if you're not doing it with a dinghy, that means you're moving your boat all the time to go to these places. The first time we crossed the Pacific, I had a little 9-foot dinghy for all 6 of us. And if y'all remember that was a little tight fit, had a little 9 horsepower engine. It wouldn't even get out and plane on the water. And, obviously, once again, if it's all you can afford, then do it. I mean, don't let a small dinghy or money get in the way of living the dream. But once again, I'm talking from my perspective. If you can look at the dinghy, because that's going to be, that's the caravan. That's the expedition. That's what's getting you around. And a lot of people, that's your 4-wheel drive. That's right. And that's what gets you, a lot of people just use their dinghy to go from their boat to shore to drink wine and have happy hour. That's it. And so a small dinghy doesn't matter to them. But when we load up, we throw our scuba gear in there. We throw all our gear in there, and we'll go 20 miles on that dinghy to a dive site and be there in 15, 20 minutes or an hour and go diving and be back at our boat while everybody else is sitting on their boats because they don't want to move their boat 20 miles and they don't want to take their dinghy 20 miles. So dinghies are very important. Next piece on this is what age. The older boats, me and Chris totally feel, I think I talk about this in another slide, but used versus new, and we'll talk about this in another slide, but our boat is a 2006. Chris, I don't know what your age your boat is, but
it's a 2004.
2004. It seems to us that the vintage boats that were made between like 1998 and 2008 were just built really well. A lot of those boats were built really well. I know they had some boats that had some hull issues, lagoon or something like that, but they were built really well. We like used boats. A brand new boat does not, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, and I won't go into it here, but I think 15 to 20-year-old boat is a fine boat. There's nothing wrong with that. And even older than that, because they used to have a lot of quality. Go ahead, Chris.
So the advantage of buying an older boat is you can go bigger with the same budget. And bigger is more comfortable. It, like Keith mentioned, a 48, 49, 50 to 55-foot boat is much more comfortable than a 39-foot boat, particularly in a catamaran. You get way less hobby horsing, which is this motion in the bigger boat. And so, yeah, the older the boat, you can still get a well-maintained older boat is in some ways, I actually think it's more comfortable to be able to go bigger. And you've got, if it's well-maintained, there's absolutely very little difference between the older boat and the newer boat.
That's right. Next, you want to ask, does it feel like a home? Obviously, that's something you're going to know when you walk on a boat. But once again, look at as many boats as you can. Is it seaworthy and safe? And most boats are seaworthy and safe, even if they've been wrecked and they've been repaired right. Just because a boat's been wrecked, don't let that put you off of it. Just because it's had a hole in it, it's sunk, don't let that put. If it's been repaired right, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just fiberglass, and boats can be fixed and repaired right. And that might help you get a better deal on that boat, especially in today's times. Is it ready to sell? We talked a little bit about this yesterday. I think we did, or maybe we didn't, but is it ready to sell? And what we mean by that, if you buy a boat from a cruiser or a family that's already been cruising, that boat is ready to go. That boat is more than likely got the sails, it's got the gear, it's got the kit on it, it's ready to go. And then last here is it located somewhere you want to sell? I mean, is the boat in the Mediterranean? Do you want to go sell in the Med? Is it in Southeast Asia? Is it in the Indian Ocean? Where is it at in the Caribbean? And so those are things you want to think about. And I want to highlight that. A lot of people get nervous about buying foreign boats, buying a boat that's over in the Med or in Greece or in India or in Thailand. In today's world, it's pretty safe that you can buy a boat and get through the legal issues and get through the transfer of paperwork without too much drama. I had a little drama with my Greek boat, but I up front, I took care of that contractually with the owner so that no matter how long the paperwork took, I was covered. And so everything you want to do with a boat, don't let it being in some third world country put you off on finding a great boat, because in today's world, I don't hear too many horror stories of, oh, that deal went bad. Or, I mean, there are some deals that go bad, but if you prepare and you're thinking, you can work through a lot of those issues and mitigate a lot of those risks.
Amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic.
All right, buying the right boat.
Keith, sorry, before you dive into this, I just want to again do a quick time acknowledgement. It's 10 past 10. We started a bit late because of the technical difficulties. Sorry about that. But just to give people an idea, we should be able to wrap up in the next 20 minutes or so. I think yesterday we said we'd do our best to keep this to an hour and a half today. And I think we're on track to do that the way we're going. So we'll try and get to a few more questions and comments, but we're going to motor through and get you guys all everything we got to go over today.
That's Chris telling me I'm being long-winded, guys. That was the sign, the secret sign. I'm being long-winded. So I'm just saying, buying the right boat. Today's market, and this is a fact, guys. Today it'd be a tough day to buy a boat. The boats are on fire right now. It's a seller's market right now, and it's not the best time in the world to buy a boat. It just is not. It's not a good time at all. But if you've got your money ready to go and you know what you want, and you're willing to think outside the box, and you can find a deal out there, I'm sure. And if you're ready to be ready to move on it, because if you don't get it, somebody else will. And so know the boat you want, know the kind of deal you want, and just trying to find the boat that fits into that category. Used versus new. Hands down, me and Chris both believe, and I believe it, and I've been around a lot of it in the last 5.5 years, buy a used boat. If a lot of people say, well, I want to buy a new boat so I don't have the hassles of repairing and everything's under warranty. And let me tell you, a new boat with warranty it breaks down just as much as a used boat breaks down, probably even more, because you're working out the kinks. The only difference is you're not going to have to pay for those repairs. And so here's the deal. Everybody I know that has to deal with warranty issues on a boat, so far, in my experience, it's just my experience out here on the water, has had more hell trying to get the warranty stuff covered and fixed than they would have if they just wrote a check and got the part fixed. Now, in the end, they got it fixed and they got their warranty covered, but it took a toll on their relationship with their boat, with the boat maker. It was not a good deal, because the boat manufacturers want so much paperwork and proof of everything. And it's not fun. It's just not fun. And so new boats do break down just as much as used boats. And, I think, once again, going with
I
used
want to
boats.
interject and just say that my experience is exactly the same. And I could tell a handful of stories now of people I know. One guy here in Sarong, which is probably the worst marina that you could be in the world. He was supposed to go in and out and get his glass resealed because it was a warranty issue on a Leopard that he had bought. And it was supposed to be in and out in like 2 days. He was there 3 weeks in literally the worst marina I've ever been in my life. He was stuck in that marina for 3 weeks because they couldn't go anywhere, because every day they kept saying, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And in the end, if he had just written a check, he would have been in and out in 2 days. So yeah, the warranty stuff, as you get remote and you're offshore cruising, it's a real pain. I know another guy who had to motor on one engine from the Solomon Islands to Singapore to get engine work done because there was nobody that would do the warranty work in the Solomon Islands. So it's, yeah, I'm 100% with you. Used over new all day long. Plus, to me, it's like buying a new car. A used boat, you buy a boat that's 5 years old, it's going to depreciate way less, if we're going to talk financials, than a brand new boat is going to depreciate. Very similar to like buying a new car.
That's right. And once again, guys, look for boats that are being actively cruised. Somebody who's living a full-term live aboard that's been cruising that boat, whether it be in Southeast Asia or Tahiti, the French Polynesia, look for boats that have been cruised, because chances are all the kinks are worked out. They've been using that boat on a daily basis. They're keeping it in a well-oiled machine. Most sailors that I know take care of their boats really well. And you'll know those boats when you walk onto them. You'll be like, okay, so they took care of this boat. And so those are just things to think about. And once again, like I've said in my videos, every boat has issues. Every boat has a little bit of AIDS. I'm just saying, they all have a little bit of herpes, a little bit of something, and don't let that put you off, because every boat has something like that. What you just need to understand is, can you live with what that boat has, and can you deal with it? And so don't let a great boat slip by you because you think something's bad wrong with it, or you've been on some sailing forum where they talk about X, Y, and Z. This is bad. Understand what's wrong with that boat, understand the issues with that boat, and move through that problem and mitigate your risk with that issue. And once again, buying the right boat is a long subject. Once again, I want to tell you, at the end of all of this, we have an option for those who want to get really into the detail of buying boats, where we talk about this, and we spend a lot of time. I see a lot of questions flying through here, and about more details on this boat stuff, but there's just not enough time to talk about everything that we know about buying a boat. But there is going to be an option at the end of all of this for you guys who want more detail, who want a custom type curriculum where you can get involved in that.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, what we've done is to basically take your questions and try and hit you with the highest impact stuff that's going to help you in the amount of time that we have right now. We're getting limited on time to get it all done today, so let's keep going.
All right, another big issue out here is insurance. We get this question, and let me tell you something. It's not easy for me to get insurance on a boat. And I've got 50,000 blue water miles of cruising, no accidents, knock on wood, sailed around the world, sailed around in most places. I've got local knowledge of most places in the world now, and it's still hard for me to get insurance on a boat. Today's insurance market is tight. It's an underwriter's market. They can pick and choose. They've got lines of people out their door wanting insurance on boat, and they can pick and choose the risk they want to take. So getting insured when you're starting out is not simple. It's complicated, and it can be very hard. A lot of times insurance companies, if you don't have experience, and really that's the biggest racket, and I'll tell you why. Because today they still tell me before, when I started out, they said, well, you don't have experience. Okay. That's why my insurance premium was $14,000 a year. Okay. Then when I got that experience, and I've sold 50,000 miles, why is my insurance still $14,000 a year? Well, the hurricanes took everything out, or it's a racket.
Mine's gone up. Every single year it's gone up at least 10%, some years 20%, even though I have more experience.
So the reality is there's a little bit to the insurance having experience, but the reality is they're just trying to make up whatever they can to charge you what they can. But you need to learn to think outside the box with the underwriters. You need to think, and I'll give you a good example of that. When we first started selling in the monohull and we went from Panama to the Marquesas, I could not get insurance. They wanted to have me put crew on the boat, 3 experienced sailors that had sailed that 3,000, 4,000 mile passage. And I would have had to pay those people to do that. And they wanted to charge me a bunch of money to do that. And so what I asked them to do for that, I said, why don't you raise my deductible $100,000 beyond what it already is for that crossing from Panama to the Marquesas? And once I get the Marquesas, then you lower it. And I'm not going to bring a crew with me. I'm going to have my family, my children, and we're going to crew the boat. And they took it. And so basically I was self-insuring another $100,000 while I did that crossing. And that's what it took for me to get that experience across that ocean. And that worked out. So what I'm saying is think outside the box. Don't just listen to the broker. Go back to the brokers. If you're dealing with insurance brokers, go back to them and say, can we do this? Will you go back to the underwriter with this? And once again, today's market, underwriters don't have to listen to any options. They can pick and choose who they want to write and who they don't want to write. So it is a tough deal out there.
Well, one thing I just want to add real quick is you mentioned brokers, insurance brokers. And I think in this particular insurance industry, it's extremely important that you're working with a broker that understands the offshore yacht market, because there's very few underwriters in the market, and not very many, in my experience, there's very few brokers who really understand the market and understand where they need to go to get you your policy, particularly if you're trying to sail in a more remote region in the world. And so, yeah, that make sure when you're talking to your broker, like, have you underwritten policies for offshore yachts before? Tell me some examples of where you've done that to make sure that they know what they're doing.
And once again, the biggest risk from my perspective, this is my personal opinion, your biggest risk out there sailing is when you're sailing next to islands and around marinas and other boats. The big blue water crossing, the passage across the passages. Chris, how many containers did you hit last year?
22.
22 containers, and I hit 4 or 5 big blue whales. That doesn't happen. Out there in the blue water, when you're doing a passage, that is the safest you're going to be. You're going to be at risk when you're navigating through reefs and cuts. You're going to be at risk when you're sitting on anchor and you drag, and maybe you drag into another boat, or you drag onto the beach or something like that. Or when you're going into a marina and the wind's blowing side on and you hit your boat and ding it up in the marina. The blue water cruising is the safest piece. That's where you're literally probably not going to have any issues unless something fails inside your boat and it sinks, which is very rare to even happen. So understand where your risk lies and get your broker to understand that risk as well. And you know, a lot of people don't insure. A lot of people will self-insure their boat. I know a lot of people who have $500,000 boats and they don't carry insurance. They just self-insure. I know a lot of people who have $100,000 boats that insure. They insure their whole boat. And if you're financing, obviously you're going to have to insure that boat. But if you're paying cash for that, and that's why we recommend to pay cash for the boat, because then you can decide whether you want to take the risk of not insuring or self-insuring yourself.
On that note, just really quick on the financing thing, because there's been some questions. The other problem that comes up with financing is a lot of times you have a massive problem trying to sail that boat offshore. There's all kinds of terms and conditions on where you can go and when you can go with a boat. So it's always better to try and find a way, either refinance a house or something. Find an independent source of money to buy that boat. Don't have a lien on that boat, because it's just going to restrict the freedom that you have.
I want to answer 2 questions. You don't have to have insurance on your boat unless it's financed and some third party. You don't need insurance. You do need insurance if you're going into, some marinas require you to have liability insurance in case you run into somebody's boat. They do require that. But if you're not going into marinas and you're just sitting on the hook, you don't have to have insurance. Another question we get all the time is, do you have to have a captain's license to sail a boat? No, you do not have to have it. I do not have a captain's license. I've been sailing around the world for 5 years. Chris does not have a captain's license. None of us have captain's license. That's and I just barely took ASA 101 and 102, and that didn't really, that taught me some sailing terms, but the experience comes from being out on the water. That's the bottom line. Insuring total loss, we covered all that, and that's what you're getting into is you know, you're insuring for catastrophic failures. That if you've got a $500,000, $1 million boat or a $300,000 boat, me and Chris insure for catastrophic stuff. That's basically, and we can talk a little bit about health insurance. Health insurance is another one that we deal with. How do you deal with health insurance out here? And once again, in today's market, we insure for catastrophic issues. And I think our deductible is $10,000. So we pay for everything up to $10,000. And then only our insurance would kick in if we were, our health insurance would kick in if we were hospitalized. And it's international insurance. And I think we pay $300, $400 a month for our entire family, for me and Renee. And, but once again, it only covers if we get into a hospital and it's a major thing. And so we're self-insuring. And I want to make something clear. Everywhere in the world is cheaper in health insurance than America. That's just the bottom line.
Cheaper in healthcare costs, not just insurance, like to go to the doctor, whatever. It's
totally. Health insurance is or not health insurance, but health care costs. When you walk into a doctor, you can get so much done anywhere in the world than if you're in a first world country. And obviously, you know, Chris is from Canada, where they love socialism and they've got socialized medicine up there. And so, you know, he can get free healthcare up there if he's willing to wait 6 months to get a new leg. But In any case, we've never had a problem with health providing anywhere in the world, whether it be ingrown toenails or kidney stones or broken arms or whatever we've had. We've never had an issue getting treatment anywhere in the world, even in third world countries like, and I hate to say third world, I don't want that offending you, but countries like Fiji or French Polynesia, there's great doctors that serve those people. They've went to the right medical schools. They may not have the facilities like in America or Canada or England or Europe, but they are great doctors and they care, and they don't charge hardly any money to take care of you. So
Yep.
It's very easy to have your health taken care of out there. Now, if you have advanced issues and advanced health issues and comorbidities out there, you need to plan for those things and make sure you're taken care of, because a lot of places don't have the kind of medicines you might want or have the brands that you need, and you'll want to, and that's very easy to organize. And that's a whole nother issue of talking about that kind of stuff. But
you nailed it there, though, that if there is, because there has been some questions about that, about things like diabetes and things, and you need a plan. You need a plan to be able to deal with it. It's deal withable. There's a way to make it work, but you need to have a solid plan in place as to how you're going to manage that while you're sailing.
And diabetes is a big thing in the world now. Diabetes is big in the South Pacific. It's big in all those islands. They carry insulin. I mean, most things that are like that are everywhere, especially in the South Pacific. There's a lot of diabetes.
Problem with it. Yeah. I just like to say really quick on that I've had the best experience with dentists in my entire life here in Valley. Better dental care than I've got anywhere else in the world, including Canada. And that's not covered by our socialist medical system. They don't cover the dental. So it's way cheaper to go to the dentist here for me than it is in Canada. Plus, I haven't been there in 6 months. And if you're not in the country for 6 months, they cut you off, all that stuff. So
all right.
I've been thrown out to pasture. All right. We'll keep motoring. Thanks, guys, for your patience. It looks like we are going to run over even the 20 minutes I said, but we're getting through lots of good stuff. I hope that we're answering a lot of questions, and that you guys are getting a lot of value out of this. So, choosing the right gear. Again, this is another big subject that we could spend an entire masterclass on. The conveniences of home that you want to have on your boat versus need to have on your boat, how to set it up in a way that's going to be super comfortable for cruising. We don't have the time to do that. So what I'm going to touch on right now is just the most essential safety equipment that you need, that we believe that you need, absolutely must have to go offshore cruising. Number one is an EPIRB, emergency positioning beacon. This is the absolute number one piece of gear. If you got in any trouble anywhere out there in the blue water, on the ocean, you flick a switch on this device, you have it registered with your local search and rescue services. They will coordinate a global worldwide search and rescue response to go home in on that beacon. It's a GPS beacon. Okay. If that beacon gets submerged because your boat sinks, it automatically goes off. So very critical piece of gear to have to be able to be rescued in the event of an emergency. You want to have a life raft as well. A life raft is literally a last ultimate resort for you. I don't know personally anybody who's ever spent any time in a life raft. There was some big accidents in the 1970s, the Fastnet race, Sydney Hobart race, and they learned a lot out of those. And what they learned was you only go into your life raft if you're stepping up from your boat into your life raft, meaning your boat's already under the water. That's when you go into the life raft. Other than that, you stay with the boat. But you still want to have that life raft just for the peace of mind that if for some whatever reason your boat were to sink, you've got somewhere to go. Trauma medical kit, another important piece of gear. In addition to that, we'd also suggest you get a little bit of first aid training to know how to use the gear in the trauma medical kit. Again, you're going to be, when you're sailing offshore, you're out of the range of immediate emergency care for a certain period of time. So you need to be able to have the skills to manage certain issues if they come up, big cuts and wounds and things like that. Emergency ditch bag is important. If you're going to go in the life raft, you need to have a bag ready to go with all the stuff that you need to survive in the life raft. Emergency communications equipment. So you could use a VHF is essential. You need to have a VHF on your boat. An SSB, I would say today is optional. It can be replaced with a sat phone or some sort of satellite communications device. Sat phone's amazing. If you have any issues, not only can you communicate with your friends on the sat phone, other cruisers, but you can communicate directly with search and rescue authorities in order to tell them what's going on. You can talk to doctors. We had an accident's not the right word, an incident. We were on the crossing from Fiji to Vanuatu, and my youngest, somebody left the seasickness pills on the table, and my youngest downed like 4 seasickness pills. And she was 3.5 at the time. And we panicked. You're like, oh my God, what do we do? We have DAN Insurance, Divers Alert Network. And through that, we were able to contact an emergency physician, poison expert, and say, hey, this is what happened. And they said, look, no big deal. You know, we told them what the drug was. They're like, just watch her. She should totally be fine. And that really gave us a sense of peace of mind and ease in that moment. You know, we were freaking out until we were able to contact somebody with some more experience. So communications can be a godsend offshore, to be able to reach out to more resources for help when you have problems. Absolutely essential. So I would say that's essential safety gear. Now I'm going to talk about essential gear that you need to have on the boat that Keith and I believe that you need to have. This is not, again, you can sail offshore without this stuff. Personally, I wouldn't. And I know Keith wouldn't either. So the way that we like to sail, I would not leave the dock without this gear and without this gear working properly. Number one, some sort of self-steering and autopilot, and an autopilot with spares. I don't know if anybody's got experience here, but hand steering a sailboat offshore is probably in the top 3 of the most tiring activities I could think of doing. It's absolutely terrible. And if it's just going to be 2 of you on the boat, you're going to get, it's not going to work very long if you have to hand steer. I have a friend of mine here in Indonesia who he bought an older boat, and he asked me what he should put on it. I told him an autopilot. He left without an autopilot. And 2 weeks after he left, he sent me a text and said, you were right. I'm buying an autopilot. Because he had spent a lot of time driving in a van. So he was like, I'm used to driving. You know, we drove all over the US on a row. I'm happy to sit at the wheel and steer. I'm like, dude, it's a completely different ball game. And you know, in the end, he messaged me and said, I'm buying an autopilot. So autopilot. Number 2 is radar. Radar is an extra set of eyes for you. You still want to have somebody on watch, but you can set a radar perimeter around the boat so that squalls or boat traffic or anything that comes into that perimeter while you're offshore, an alarm goes off just as an extra set of eyes to keep you safe. Super helpful with spotting squalls offshore. We'll talk a bit about that in weather. Water maker. There's absolutely nothing like a hot shower before bed while underway offshore. And you do not want to be carting jerry cans of water onto your boat. That's not why I wanted to go cruising. I love being able to push a button and have my boat make fresh water. They're not that expensive these days, and they're super robust machines if they're cared for and maintained in the way they're meant to be.
Once again, guys, that all goes back to lifestyle. Who are you? What are your expectations? Does your wife like to take a hot shower every night? Do you like to not be stressed by how much water you're using? Do you got to take Navy showers every time you take a shower? I mean, those are the things I learned about myself is I want plenty of water on the boat. I don't even want to think about managing water or rationing water. And I'm dang sure when it comes to the autopilot, you guys, and once again, you can go cruise without it. We know a lot of young people who hand steer all across the oceans, and, you know, great for them. They're 21 years old. They've got lots of energy and excitement, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for families and marriages, that autopilot, you got to have it, and you got to have the spares to back that autopilot up. Don't even start doing it if you're like us and you relate to me. Don't even go out there and buy a boat without an autopilot and the spares or a water maker or a radar. Just don't do it.
Or buy the boat and then put it on it.
Yeah.
Don't leave without it.
Don't leave without it, and understand how they work. That's for sure.
Keith, this is you.
All right. Weather. This is another one where we get lots and lots of questions. Guys, weather is very important. Of all the technical stuff you need to know how to do, weather is a big issue. And it's the simplest issue, but it's not rocket science. It's not complicated, but you do need to understand weather. You can teach yourself weather. You can learn weather on the internet, on YouTube. You can learn weather in books, but you need to know weather. And weather, basically, when we talk about weather, it's passage planning. You don't want to be sailing the thing on the left-hand side of your screen. That's a low pressure system. And a low pressure system has lots of violent weather in it. And that's where you see Hollywood making movies about those kind of systems. Most cruisers and sailors don't sail in that kind of weather unless they're stupid. And I've known some stupid sailors out there, but and I say stupid. Racing sailors, people, like the Volvo Ocean Race, they love weather like that. They like to be right there on the edge of that sucker where the wind's blowing 40 knots and hauling the mail. But those are experienced they're experienced sailors, and they've got a meteorologist on board. They're looking at that weather all the time. We are in the boat over here on the right-hand side. The blue water, calm, you don't even want to put the sail out. You start the engine and we motor to the next anchorage. I mean, that's where we want to be. So you want to be paying attention to weather. Learn the big picture of weather patterns and when to sail. And this boils into the part of when to sail, which is weather. And you don't want to be sailing in cyclone season. And in the Southern Hemisphere, they call them cyclones in the Southern Hemisphere. Hurricane season in the Southern Hemisphere is November through April. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it's April through November. And that's the way it is. Didn't I say that right? Yeah, I said that right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And the
that's the way it is all-
South Pacific. South Pacific.
Yeah. And so you want to stay away from those cyclone seasons. Don't even go out sailing in them, and you'll be safe.
I would go a step further personally and say, don't even be in those areas if you can, when there's, don't be in the South Pacific during cyclone season. If you can, don't be in the Caribbean during hurricane season. I know a lot of people do that now. It's becoming more and more popular. And that's why all those boats were wrecked in the big hurricanes. But you just don't want to be there because hurricanes and cyclones are massively unpredictable. And if you get hit, a direct hit with a cyclone, there's no way to survive. I don't mean like yourself, your boat. If you get a direct hit with a cyclone, you're going to sustain damage to your boat. And you're not going to find an insurer that will insure you while you're there anyway.
And you guys saw last season that we got hung up in Fiji during cyclone season, and the biggest Category 5 Yasa came right around us, and we were dodging that, and we survived that. But that wasn't a fun time for me. That was high anxiety, high level of anxiety. I had insurance on the boat. No, I wouldn't have had insurance on that boat because my insurance company told me I had to be out of that cyclone that area, and they wouldn't cover me. So I was not covered if a cyclone would have hit me. So I was self-insuring when we were in Fiji when Yasa was coming over the top of us. But you just want to stay away from that. It's very easy to stay away from that. Weather prediction software out there, meteorology today is so good, and there's no need to even be in stuff like that. COVID was causing us to be in that situation, and so we had to deal with it, but that's very rare. All right, weather, sail, planning for weather, when to sail. 95% of dealing with weather is proper planning, guys. It's just following a few simple suggestions. Do not go if the forecast is more than 25 knots. And I'm going to put a caveat on that. Do not go if the forecast is more than 25 knots and the wind is anything the beam or forward of that. And the reason for that is because that's going to be there's nothing going to be unsafe about that, but it's not going to be very comfortable. You're going to have, if the wind's been blowing for 25 knots for the last 3 or 4 days, it's got the sea state up, and the wind waves are going to be going the same way the wind has been blowing. And if you're going across that, and the wind and the wave is hitting you on the beam or anything forward of the beam, you're going to be getting hammered, and it's not going to be a comfortable ride. It'll be a safe ride, but it's not going to be comfortable, and your crew's not going to be happy. So just have some benchmarks where you feel safe. And start with 25 knots. We're not going to go out in anything greater than 25 knots if it's ahead of the beam. Now, I'll go out in 30 to 40 knots of wind if it's behind me and I'm in following seas and I'm going thousands of miles downwind and everything's behind me. I don't mind that at all, but you don't want to be going out there with anything ahead of the beam. And you guys understand when I say beam, the center of the boat going forward to the front of the boat. When the wind's coming at you and you're sailing into the wind, it's very uncomfortable, whether you're in a monohull or a catamaran, when you're sailing into heavy seas and heavy winds. So once again, sea state is more important than wind. For me as a cruiser, for Chris and our families, the sea state dictates comfortableness out there on the water. And so look at the sea state more than you look at the wind. The wind's going to dictate sea state, but look at the direction the waves are coming. Look at which way you're going to be going into those waves. And just don't go out if there's more than 2 meter seas if it's anything on the beam or in front of it, because it can be a rough ride. Then it's not unsafe, it's just not going to be comfortable. And I always try to pick a weather window with calm seas in the beginning, just like in the Maldives. We took off to the Maldives. We had a day or two of some calm weather, and then the winds picked up. We got right into the weather off of Western Australia, and we had some pretty heavy weather there, heavy wind and some heavy wave on the beam. And we made really good time. But my boat's almost a 60-foot boat. It handled that really well and really nice. But I always try to start a passage or any kind of passage with a nice, calm weather window in the beginning, even if I have to motor a little more. A lot of sailors, they don't want to turn their motors on. They've got so much pride. I'm not going until I can sail 100% of the way. Well, good luck for you. I bought a boat that has 2 motors, and I'm going to use them. And I've got diesel to spare. So that's what I'm going to do. I didn't buy a boat, so I want to use all the components of the boat. I want everything to be in good working order. So, I like to start out our passage very calm, very easy, and ease into that. And so that's just picking a good weather window. Once again, all you guys out there who are new to weather and you're learning weather, you can hire a personal meteorologist, a weather router for cheap, $75 a weather report, and they'll guide you where you want to go. But one thing I recommend everybody do is before you hire that weather router, you decide the weather window you want to leave on, and you in your mind, you figure out what it is and what you think it is. And then you call the weather router and you let him tell you. Don't you tell him what you think, let him tell you what he thinks and see if it aligns with what you're thinking. That way there's no confirmation bias when you're paying him $75. And the other thing you got to remember about weather routers is most of them are not out there on the boat with you. So most weather routers will route for racers and everybody like that. So their idea of comfort and your idea of comfort may be 2 different things. So just truly understand the weather out there. I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll just add is, I use the weather router for, I would say, probably the first 5 or 6 offshore passages that I did. The very first trip I did, I had 0 experience, used a weather router. I did what you said, though. I tried to figure it out on my own. And then I got him to tell me what he thought and was like, does this make sense to me? And yeah, it was a great way to learn. So, but I would suggest trying to figure out more than I did, because I really had no idea what I was going into. We kind of got lucky.
I want to add something too. In 50,000 miles, guys, I've had passages I disliked, but I've never had a passage that was unsafe. Even when I was a newbie and I didn't know what I was doing, I've never had a passage where I thought, oh God, this is the end. What have I done? I've had passages where the prediction wasn't quite right, the wave height wasn't quite right, or the seas were triangulated, maybe the currents, and obviously the weather people can't pick up on everything out there. So sometimes you can get in confused seas out there, and confused seas are where the current's going one way, wind's going another way, and the swell is going another way. And it's just making the seas all lumpy and it's very uncomfortable. And I've been in situations like that, but it was never unsafe. The other thing I just want to point out, if you look at the picture on your left, you see the orange and the red, and you get, and I look at that now and I think that'd be good sailing right there. That'd be some pretty good wind. If I'm going the right direction, that's going to be some good sailing. And so don't let preconceived notions of when you start looking at weather and all these things bind you down, because you do need some wind if you're going to sail. And that's weather. And we talk a lot about weather later, but that's what we think is important about weather right now. All right, next up here is let's see, I gotta move this so I can read. I can't move it. There we go. Plan the details of your route, where to sail. And where to sail is basically navigation, going from point A to point B. And where to sail starts with when to sail. And you got to know where, you got to know the weather. Where's the weather going to be at when you're sailing? And you use the weather forecast to do that. Cross-reference, and one thing me and Chris are very, very big on when it comes to charts and navigation is using satellite images. Once again, every wreck I've seen out there on the water in the last 5.5 years has been from people hitting reefs. And they hit reefs because they're either going at dark, or they're going at night, or they're not paying attention, or they're not looking at satellite imagery. And the satellite imagery is so good today. And then don't forget to zoom in, whether you're using charts or whatever you're using, don't forget to zoom in. and use cross-reference your satellite images with your charts, with your nautical charts, whatever charts you're using. And that will keep you safe. And take into consideration tide, currents, daylight. Always arrive in the daytime. Never, never, ever arrive at dark into a new place you've never been, ever. Don't do it. We have gone into places at night because we've been there before, and I have the tracks where I went in, and I've kept those tracks. But don't ever do that. Don't leave in the dark, and don't arrive in the dark. That's a big no-no. That's a no-go. Chris, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered everything. Just on the satellite image thing, I'd say, charts are great in the Western world, like sailing around the US or sailing around Canada. They're super detailed. Satellite images can supplement that. Once you get out of the kind of first world, Western world, and you get into more remote destinations, charts can be terrible. I've been in places, I've been in Fiji where there's a reef, and the reef is 2 miles on the chart. It's 2 miles away from where it actually is. And on my chart plotter, I've been sailing over land on the chart plotter. So really, once we got outside of the first world, most of my navigation now, and in Indonesia, 100% of my navigation is satellite images. So yeah, super helpful.
And so navigation is something you can learn, and weather is something you can learn, and you need to know both of those. And navigation is not hard. It's just following a map, looking at satellite imagery. And somebody asked, what do we use? Use Google Maps. I mean, I use Google Maps all the time out there. Most of the time we have SIM cards, communication out there. Our cell phones work, and it's not satellite, our cell phones work. And you just use those. And then if you're in an area where you've got Wi-Fi and you're going to a place where there's not good cellular, you download those maps, and you always go in with the sun over your shoulder. If you're going into reefs and cuts and passages, you go with the sun behind you, shining down on the reef. So you can see, and you have somebody up on watch, up in the bird's nest, looking down and seeing the reefs. I take my dinghy out all the time. I'll anchor, or I'll have Jack tread water outside of a cut, and I'll take my dinghy with the chart plotter on it, and I'll go inside of a reef, check it out, check out the depths, and I'll make a map because I've got a chart plotter on my dinghy. That's the thing I can't live without, is that chart plotter on my dinghy. That is like the best investment I have ever made. And I use that all the time to go in and scout anchor locations, bombing locations, and I come back out. And so that's how we do that. And that'll keep you from getting in trouble and hitting a reef.
And I'll just, the application that I use is a free application for my images. It's called Offline Maps, available on Android. That's like the name of the application is Offline Maps. A lot of people in Southeast Asia use that, and you can download the maps onto there if you're going to a region where there's no cell service, and it works really, really great. So it's on your phone or your tablet.
Yeah.
You got anything else you want to add, or we're gonna go to the next one?
I did want to talk about weather one more time.
Okay.
Guys, when you're looking at weather and you're learning weather, start looking at weather. Like if you're going on, like when we went from Western Australia to the Maldives, I started watching weather patterns in the Indian Ocean a month before I started sailing. I'd look at it every day. Just take 5 minutes, look on my phone and look at the weather and see what the weather systems were doing, so I could start forming a plan in my head of where I wanted to sail, the best place to sail in those wind zones, and where the storms were and the squash zones were, where I could get to the Maldives. And so when you get ready to make passages, just always, you're going to be looking at weather every day. Weather's going to become a part of your everyday life as you live on a boat, because it's very important to you. And the same thing goes for when you're planning to sail, where to sail. Start looking at a chart, and if you want to go to this island, we'll start studying that a week before you go there, just so you understand and you're familiar with it. Don't just get out and say, we're gonna go here and we're gonna figure out when we get there. That's not planning. That's not preparation. That's asking for trouble. Have the knowledge beforehand so you know what to look for.
Awesome. Cool. Again, guys, just quick on the time. I want to thank everybody for sticking around. Let us know in the chat if you're happy that you stuck around and everything's good. I know I'm getting a bit tired, but we're going to keep going here and get through today. Today, we're covering a lot of ground. So appreciate everybody staying there. And yeah, let us know if this is all working for you, any questions you've got, and we're happy to keep going. Communications. I'll cover this one. So communications, guys. So we talked a little bit about communications before and essential gear. I want to talk about the one piece of gear that can give you the confidence to go now. But before I do that, just there's been a couple of questions about internet while you're on the boat. And when you're sailing in country, we'll call it, like you're sailing around locally, around a country, around the islands, a lot of the time you're in cell service. And a lot of what we use for internet is just cell-based internet. And in Indonesia, where we're at now, almost all of Indonesia, you can access an LTE or 4G cell service. Of course, in remote areas, you're not going to get it, but you can plan when you're going into those remote areas to be gone for a little bit, then you come back out into cell service. A lot of people have mentioned Starlink. You know, I'll believe that when it comes out. Elon Musk loves to promise stuff. He eventually delivers, but sometimes it's a little later. So we'll see on that one. But today you can use satellite communication to be able to communicate while you're outside of cell service. They have satellite routers like this one here on the screen, and you can get email, you can send texts, you can download the weather on it. So you can stay in communication while you're outside. And this really is what gave me and has given a lot of people that I've worked with the confidence to go, because they know that when they leave and they're outside of normal communication, outside of normal cell communication, they're still only a phone call, a text message, or an email away from asking for help. And this can be real time. You can pick up the phone and call somebody. You can send texts, and it's extremely affordable rates to be able to buy a device like this and to get the plan to operate it is not very expensive. Keith, anything you want to add to that?
This is part of that essential gear. On my boat, I have 2 satellite phones. One's in a box, brand new, ready to go, and the other one's out there because and when we're doing passage making and we're out of internet, that's the only way I get my weather. And that's how I talk to other people. I text them and I talk to other people. So having 2 sets of gear and having redundant gear in this area is a big deal. I would recommend always having 2 of whatever your main communications is to the outside world where you're getting weather.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So problem solving. I'm going to go through this really quick again, because I want to get to the end. I know some people here, some people got to go. So we want to get you the content. Again, if you do have to go, this is going to be recorded and I'll post it up in the group. Okay. So you can problem solving is a big one. A lot of people ask, you know, what happens if something happens while I'm sailing my boat and I don't know how to deal with it? Well, I'm here to tell you that you likely will know how to deal with it, because in my experience, you can solve almost every problem that comes up while sailing if you follow what we call the 5 S's. Okay. And these are situational awareness, schedule, sleep, stay calm, and sail with a buddy. And these are not just for offshore sailing. This is for even if you're just sailing around coastal waters. Situational awareness comes first and foremost by creating and maintaining a routine and following a checklist. It's all about awareness. Okay, being aware of what's happening when you're walking around the boat and developing an awareness of looking at various systems to make sure that they're functioning properly. Problem solving starts with prevention, and prevention starts with awareness, and having a checklist is the best way to make sure that you're developing an awareness around what you need to be looking at on the systems on your boat. Today, Keith and I don't really use checklists in the same way that we did, because now it's almost innate. It's rote. We've done it so many times. We know what we're looking at. I still use checklists for a few things just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Schedule. You want to create and follow a watch schedule offshore, okay, when you're sailing offshore, and you want to do this to make sure that everyone's getting adequate rest. If there is only 2 of you, consider bringing a crew. If you think it's going to be a bit much for you guys, running a watch with just the 2 of you. Personally, I prefer a 3-hour watch schedule, but you know, many different things. There's many different ways to do this. Okay, and this is important for sleep, which is the next one. Adequate sleep is critical to problem solving. Your problem solving capabilities drastically diminish with reduced sleep, which is why you want to make sure you have a watch schedule and that you're sleeping at the time you're supposed to be sleeping, because you don't know the next watch you might have to stay up through it because something's happened that you need to deal with. Okay, but so you get sleep as much as you can while you're sailing offshore. If a problem comes up, the #1 rule, guys, is to stay calm. Okay, 99.9% of problems are all solvable if you remain calm and address them step by step. And I've got a ton of stories I could share with you around this, but in the interest of time, I won't right now. But there crazy things have happened to me sailing offshore, and by staying calm and taking it one step at a time, we were able to find a very simple way out of what could have been looked at as a crazy problem, unsolvable problem almost. Sail with a buddy. Why do you sail with a buddy? You sail with a buddy because a buddy helps you stay alert. You can talk to them. You can radio them on the VHF, but most importantly, they can be there. You can be there to help them in the case of a more serious emergency. So if you guys follow these 5 S's, you're going to be able to solve almost every single problem that comes up while you're sailing. Okay, to recap, guys, we've talked today. We've covered a ton of ground today. Like we basically opened the fire hose on you and dumped it on you. So let me know how you guys are doing. I hope you've been able to digest a lot of it. Again, the recording is going to be there. But we started with preparation. You know, we started with preparation, starting with yourself, your family, making sure that you and your partner are developing a voyaging partnership, finding the balance, not over preparing, being prepared, but not being stuck in preparation and not actually going. We talked about boats, buying a safe and comfortable boat, planning for the worst, preparing for the worst and planning for the best. We've talked about planning. We talked about weather, sailing in the right areas at the right time, when to sail and where to sail. We've talked about asking for help and having the right communications gear on board to be able to get help when you need it, to solve problems if you don't know what to do, and that you can do that in today's day and age. We've talked about not leaving the harbor if the forecast is for more than 25 knots. And we talked about problem solving, finally, the 5 S's, situational awareness, schedule, sleep, stay calm, and sail with a buddy. So that's it. Keith, you got anything you want to add here before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody out there, especially the couples who are getting ready to buy a boat, or you're going to buy a boat. When you get on that boat the first time, boats make lots of noises. I should have brought this up earlier. Boats make lots of noises, and you're going to think sometimes when you're sailing, especially in a catamaran, that something's breaking, something's falling apart, but boats make noises you're not used to hearing in your home or driving down the road in your car. And if you've got hull slap, which is what waves coming underneath your boat and hitting the hull, and you're down there sleeping and you hear, and it thumps you, or you feel your heart moving, your boat's not falling apart, and you will learn your boat noises. You'll learn to understand that. And I saw a comment about that, and that can be very disconcerting for the new sailors, the wives, the children, when you first get on that boat and you're crossing the Gulf Stream, or you're going into some waves, and there's lots of noises being made, and don't let that bring fear into your life. Learn your boat noises, learn what normal is, because it's a new normal. It is a totally new normal. It's just like when I was flying airplanes or helicopters, and you're flying IFR and heavy weather and ice and everything's going on, and you can't see nothing. It's pitch black. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You got ice hanging off the wings, and your IFR going down to 200 feet over a runway, and you're listening to that engine, and you're just wondering if those engines are making the right noise all the time. And you get used to knowing your sounds of your engines in an airplane, the same thing in a boat. And so I know that's a little off base, but I just wanted to throw that out there to you guys. I saw a comment on that. But once again, thanks for everybody joining the thing. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. There's a lot of mistakes you can make out there, a lot of mistakes you can't make out there. And that's it.
Yeah, guys. So that was secret number 2: where to sail, when to sail, what to sail, how to avoid expensive mistakes, dangerous situations, and stay safe sailing even if you have no experience. You do that, in essence, if I can crunch that down into something, one soundbite, you do that by taking the time to learn what's needed to stay safe. Plan your cruise, properly prepare, and make sure you have the tools to problem solve along the way. If you do that, then you're going to be able to stop worrying about what could go wrong and start taking the steps to get out there on the blue water and start sailing. So guys, that is the end of day 2. Thank you again for everybody that has that stayed to the end here today. I know we went a little bit over. Remember, tomorrow we're diving into secret number 3. This is not the end of the masterclass. We have another day tomorrow. Okay, and this is, for me, this is probably the most important day, because this is the thing where most people get stuck. Okay, and this is about how to make the decision to leave, even if you think you're not ready. And we're going to go over that in detail tomorrow. Most people, we've gone through now the finances, the plans, and the preparations. How do you get to that point where you're like on the precipice and do I do this or do I not do this? How do I actually make that final decision? So that's what we're going to cover tomorrow, secret number 3. Yeah, we go live tomorrow, guys, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Same time we went live today, hopefully without the technical difficulties. Keith, anything you want to share about what we're going to cover tomorrow or anything else?
No, it's just, there's a lot of info here, guys. We spend a lot of time and we just picking the things that we think will get you there. And once again, you guys, tomorrow, at the end of all this, we're going to have an option for you guys to, if you want more detail, we see a lot of questions. I'd love to answer every question you guys are asking. And you guys are going to get that option tomorrow. If you want more, we've got it for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody. We'll sign off now. Thanks again for all the comments and the questions. And we look forward to seeing you guys all tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.
How do I stop? Forgot how to stop the stream. I'm just gonna